Okay, so I want to talk about Birmingham and how it's like declined. I said last a few days ago that the Tesco's has now closed down. Um, there's a closest Tesco's to me, and then there's two a little bit further up the hill, but it's all on my cycle path. But there's a Tesco's and a Sainsbury's that are together, and then there's also a Tesco's and a Sainsbury's here, and there's actually now a new Tesco's near where my gym is, kind of near the X building. But that's a really kind of there's a posher area near where my gym is, and there is a new Tesco's been opened up there. And I think that one's going to have a potential of doing better. Why? Because it's on a street. Well, the south of Birmingham is actually a little bit more done up. It's quite a lot more done up. There's some nice houses on one street of road near the south of Birmingham, and this Tesco's is nearer that. And I guess a lot of people from that area like to walk into town, so they come across this particular road. So I think that would have a lot higher success rate than the one on this side. And I do generally believe that the Tesco's on this side has closed down because of all there's loads of these tables being set up to help the homeless. There's one straight outside. I think it's called Peg Square, but I always know it as Pig Square. I'm dyslexic, so I've always read it as Pig Square, and for ages I thought it was Pig Square, but I think it's actually Peg Square. I think I think it might. I don't think it's Pig Square, but I called it Pig Square for a while. But anyway, that there was a homeless table always being set up outside there, so there was always homeless people around that area. And then they held one just another like half a minute, like 30 seconds walk around the corner from that, and then down the hill from that Tesco's there was also another. And by helping people in this way, I think you've actually just created like an area for these people to sort of fester in, because they associate this area with free stuff, but because this area has been associated with free stuff, it has basically shut down all the shops. It's not just the Tesco's that are closed down. You know, there used to be a bike shop. It didn't make sense because the bike shop was actually above another shop. So to get your bike in, you'd have to walk through the door, which was a little bit hard. It was a very heavy door, and you had to walk all the way up this flight of stairs. But I remember how I felt, you know, when I first came here 9 years ago, and that area was quite pretty. You know, I had high expectations. Like, okay, I didn't really like. I thought there needed to be a lift in that shop, and when it closed down, it kind of made sense because it was, you know, it was a bit hard to get to. You shouldn't have a bike shop when you have to lift up. You know, when you have to go up a flight of stairs, because you're going to have to lift the bike up those flight of stairs, and it's going to be hard. So it didn't make sense for it to be there, but it shut down after 2 years, and that was a big problem because the next nearest bike shop, okay, there was the Evans one, which is a good bike shop, but it charges quite. Like if you want to get a service, they make you charge for a whole service, whereas there's another place where you just pay £15 or maybe even £10, sometimes even £5. I think when I first went there it was about £5, then it went up to £10, and I think I have been paying £15, but they did quite a lot of stuff on that. But you know, so I go there now, but it is half an hour. It's about a half an hour cycle, about a 25-minute cycle away. If you were to walk it with a flat tire, however, it does take probably about 35 minutes or something, so it's not close. So that has put a strainer on stuff. But yeah, there used to be quite a lot of things being built up, and I think actually the Sainsbury's was actually new. It only just opened up in the last 9 years. So when things like that came about, I was like, oh wow, it's developing. And there was a couple of bars that have shut down, or they looked like they might have been like maybe running in the weekends or something. Like they might have got some audience in the weekends, and I was assuming that maybe it was going to become more busy and they were going to start like getting more popular. But no, they've completely shut down, and the whole of that street that leads up to that area, I mean the whole of that area has been destroyed. And it's almost like the government have been offering these free homeless people food. You get like a basket. I don't know really what you get, but I often see boxes of food being given out in this area. But I think by helping these people, you have actually destroyed the area. There's chewing gum everywhere. There's just dirt, and the pavement is definitely coming up and needs to be replaced. And I know there's a couple of potholes on my cycle right on the south part. It's only about a 10-minute cycle to the centre. But it's bad enough for me to there's a really big pothole in one of them, and every time I cycle it I feel like it's just like because it looks like it's a hole, and it looks like the cement is kind of curved over, but you can see the hole, and you look like it just like the cement's just going to pop through, and the hole is going to be like, it's like a cavity basically, and yeah, that's been there for quite a few months now, and it's not being done up or changed. So there's Birmingham is definitely, there's a lot of redevelopment on the stuff, but my sister came up across over a post the other day yesterday saying that just after I talked about all the redevelopment, she said that she found something saying that they're going to invest millions of pounds, and I don't know, when it comes to the government, I don't trust them, so I feel like I have no idea like where this money is going to be going, or I don't trust that it's going to be spent on helping the people. Like I feel like it's a scam, and like maybe that they're offering lots of people different discounts and housing, but they're only doing it because they want to know exactly how much the tenants are getting, and they're going to like do a tax thing on it to make sure that the people who are receiving this money is paying tax. And you know, on a property like this, my house, okay, I have got 3 cavity walls being coming in tomorrow, so but the thing is, because I'm God, I'm wondering if the only reason why my application got approved through this company was because the people who are running or giving the funding out know that I'm God. So there's that possibility that I'm wondering that maybe they know that, hence why I've got it, and they're trying to make it look like they're helping everyone. I don't know, because I don't trust the government at all right now, and yeah, I mean, this whole government scheme thing, and you have to apply for something and you get some good free grants or free money, you know, it is a really good thing, and it seems like a good thing, but if the only ones that are successful, you know, how am I to know who's going to be successful and who's not going to be successful? I don't know. And the people, you know, one house could be successful and one house can't be, and the government could just make up some sort of excuse, oh, you don't have universal credit, or you don't have this. But to be honest, it feels really incredibly unfair how I've got a second property and there's people in there that are getting universal credit. Now they're getting universal credit, so they're getting a discount on their rent, but it feels incredibly unfair how they've got a boiler that's 6 years old. It's actually 6 years old. I thought it was 5 years old, but I realised I put it in 2019, I think. Might have been a little bit before that, but I know during COVID there wasn't very many people in there, and I know, but we spent £2,000 or £3,000 on a new boiler in 2019, perhaps 18, I don't know, but that's quite a long time ago, so it might actually need an upgrade. But yeah, it's weird to think that they get a new boiler that's worth £3,000, and when they've already got one, when I don't have a boiler and I have to rely on a really old 70s system that just doesn't work and makes me, I put it on and I start, like, my face either starts burning up too quickly or I start choking. It's only really good in the winter, when it's freezing cold, because then it does work, but the second you turn it off it gets cold again. So it's a really terrible system. But yeah, it's weird how they would get it, because they're getting benefits, so they're getting reduced housing and they get it, and yet I'm not getting reduced housing and I don't get it. But then again, the idea could be because if these people are if they are paying rent, it means they're paying huge amounts of money. Now, if this huge amounts of money is being taxed, then, you know, they have, the tax man is claiming lots and lots of money from all this tax money through rent, and therefore maybe the reason why they're getting people on universal, or just people who are paying rent, technically more and more people are getting universal credit these days. So I don't know why it would be why would it only be people on universal credit? Surely they would say something like only people who are renting a property and paying a lot of money. You know, surely that would make more sense. Because if the whole point of this is to basically ask how much people are paying rent, and then you matching it up with like the tax system to make sure that they're being charged tax properly, you know, because I bet there's so many people that have properties and renting it out and are not paying tax. And yeah, if the whole point of this system is just to make sure that people are paying tax, and then using the tax money, or the money that the homeowners are making through the tax money, you know, if that's the only reason why they're able to fund these projects, then technically they're just getting they're making they could use this as a way of making sure that everyone is paying the right amount of tax and stuff. And I don't know if that's what the goal is, but it does make me suspicious. So because I know that my sister, my sister's gone through a mental breakdown. So when we first bought the house in 2019 or 18, 19, we spent 3 months renovating it, got a new kitchen, and spent about 15 to probably about 15,000 on it. I think it should have been about 20, but we managed to get it quite cheap. So we spent about 15,000 on it, and so we didn't. I didn't pay tax that I don't think any of us declared tax for, and I think it would be fair because because of all the money that we spent on it. So we weren't really owning anything because we just were spending money on the renovations. But yeah, and then COVID came in and the divorce happened, and we were hardly letting out. It was on day let, but because Sophie wasn't cleaning it for the first year, she would always come here, and I would do a clean when she's not here, and when they're here, they would do a full tidy up. But when the divorce happened in 2020, I no longer wanted to do this daily cleaning, or this, every time a person comes in for a day, you'd have to clean it afterwards. And because they'd had two parts of this Somalian group had some parties and destroyed it, and then there was another group that had also another party, and they'd basically just trashed the house. Because of that, I no longer wanted to rent out the property, but I was hoping my sister would come and live there, so it stayed empty for a while. I did get new people in, but yeah, technically from then onwards, Sophie has been making quite a lot of money. She hasn't been paying tax on it, but then again, because she was still legally married to her ex, it wouldn't be divided between two people. It would be divided, that money, this rent money would be divided towards three people. Hence, it's not very much, and because it's not very much, and Sophie wasn't working, that she probably wouldn't have had to pay tax on those years because of the mental illness and because of the breakdown and because of the divorce. So I don't know how it really works on that stuff, but I'm just wondering if it's like a scam, like these offering all these deals when really it's just the government trying to figure out like who's paying rent and if this rent is being taxed or not. I don't know. I don't know, but I feel like there's got to be some motive behind it. Another motive could be that if people are buying up properties and then renting it out to people, that they might have a gigantic mortgage, and if the housing market was to crash, the bankers are just going to reclaim the houses. And I'm wondering if there's a huge amount of money going into these properties to make the houses better because of the bankers just likeliness of the bankers just reclaiming the houses, because the value of the house might drop to being lower than what the mortgage currently is, and yeah, it means that the owners who have put huge amounts of money into these properties are going to lose everything if they don't pay it off in time. If they pay it off before the crash happens, then they won't lose everything, but if they don't pay it off before, or if they don't pay off the majority of it, then they might find that the bankers just repossess the houses. And well, if you're repossessing the houses, you would want there to be proper installation and proper stuff. So I feel like there's some sort of catch behind it, and I'm trying to figure out what that is. But why would these benefits only be allowed to people with on universal credit? I mean, I'm not on universal credit, so but I was still able to get it. So I think some of the things, I was not able to get the boiler. I can't get a free boiler, but I can get free cavity walls, and there's no point of getting the installation because of all the boarding that's up in the attic. But they won't put it down. They'll take it up, but they won't put the boarding down. And if they don't put the boarding down, then I can't have all the stuff up there. And if the stuff can't be up there, then I so I was thinking, if I was to guess what they should do, they probably should invest in properties, but I think they should only invest in properties in certain locations. I'm trying to think about the future, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I do believe that there's going to be a massive population reduction, and there are going to be a lot of areas in England, probably in the north, that are going to be, people aren't going to want to live there. Why would you live there when you can move more south? The problem is houses in the north might drop so much that they no longer have a resale value, and that is going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem for the banks, because if you've got a huge investment in the properties in the north, and it turns out that they're completely empty, they're not going to be sellable, and then the banks are just going to find that they can't get any money back. But yeah, the owners are going to be the ones who lose out on the most, because they're going to basically lose everything. So that's what I predict. I predict that there's going to be a housing market crash, and anyone that, yeah, a lot of homes in the north of England might not have any value after the end. So because of that, if the government was to invest in housing, it would probably be better to do it only in the sort of mid or north or south side. I mean, Manchester's not that bad. I know. The problem is, though, Scotland might start facing problems. There might be people that live in Scotland that just think, this climate is just too cold for me. I would rather live in Manchester. So I feel like there's going to be a huge number of people all moving south, and they would probably be willing to just accept that their house has no value, and that. So yeah. But the thing is, though, once that starts happening, people aren't going to want to live in a city or a town that's basically empty. And I know there might be some migration from other places, other colder places and stuff, but I don't really know, because I don't have the statistics on how many colder people like living in a cold country, because I know there are some people who generally like living in a cold country and would choose to stay there, even if half the people in the city left. And technically, if London became half as busy, people would just be so much happier, because they could go from their studio flats to 2-3 bedroomed houses, or they could start buying up a bunch of flats and then converting it into a nice big house. And I think a lot of people would be willing to do that. And if a lot of people are willing to do that, then the value there would remain some sort of value within the property. So I think London will always have sellable properties. Birmingham, I think, though, it's one of these things where I don't like Birmingham, but the reason why I don't like Birmingham is because the people in it just seem quite dangerous, and there's a growing Muslim population, and I feel very sort of isolated from and cut off from these people. So I do feel like Birmingham itself is quite nice, but it's just being destroyed by the wrong people. Now, if the wrong people were to leave, house prices would drop, because there wouldn't be as much demand for housing. But I think overall there'd be a much nicer sense of everything, because these homeless people would probably have a better chance of getting on the housing market. I was thinking today actually about about veterans and the problems they face. You've gone out to war. You've gone and spent 10 years working as a veteran for a war, risking your life. You've earned lots of money, but you've come back to the country to find that actually the housing market has doubled, has gone up 2 or 3 or 4 times more than what your salary was, and you found yourself actually being incredibly poor compared to what you should be. That's how I felt almost. I was earning when I first started massage. Well, before I did that, I was on the dole for a long time, earning £50 a week and not spending anything, because I really wanted to save up to buy a property, and I just couldn't do it. But the housing market was going up, and so I was getting more and more worried, more and more feeling a need to save and not spend any money. And then I started earning, and I was making about 20,000 a year, and 20,000 a year seemed a lot to me, because it was a lot more than what I was earning before. But I was looking at the housing market and just thinking, but the housing market's going up way more than 20,000. So I'm not richer. I'm literally just getting poorer and poorer and poorer, because the only thing I want to spend the only reason why I'm working and spending and earning all this money is to buy a property. Now, if I can only earn this much, and the property is going to be 10 times more by the time I've earned that much, then I'm definitely just falling more and more into poverty, even though I feel rich, because I'm 10 times richer than what I was when I was on the dole. And I think a lot of veterans are doing that, are going to feel that same way, only they're going to find it unfair, because they didn't realise that the housing market was just going up and up. They would have gone to war. They would have come back a year later and probably thought, well, I'm going to go off again. And I don't know, but there would have been a time, though, they would have started realising, wait, this housing market problem is going to get worse. But a lot of them might have bought a house. They might have fallen into some sort of relationship only to find that it crashes because of them going off to war, or them not being around too much, come back to find their girlfriend cheating on them, and therefore they have to sell the house. And well, when you sell a house, that's when you have to pay huge amounts of capital gains tax, and you're left with next to nothing. You're left with not enough money to buy a property, and you think, well, I'm not going to buy a property. Why? Because I'm going to be going off to war, and therefore I won't think about it. And the next thing you know, the houses are £1 million. You haven't been earning anywhere near as much as that to be able to afford a mortgage, and the only way, because you've stopped working in the army, you've lost your job, hence you no longer can buy a property. And I think there's a lot of veterans that have fallen into this trap, and it's not really their fault, because they didn't realise that the housing market was being completely fucked up by the government. So yeah, on one hand, the government offering all these deals is a good thing, but I do wonder, how are they choosing these houses? How are they being selective on who gets the deals and who doesn't? People who are paying rent are basically being ripped off, because they're paying a huge amount of rent because their owners paid a huge amount, and they're just trying to make an investment on their money. But if the only reason why these houses were this expensive was because the bankers had loaned huge amounts of money to these owners, and these owners just have to pay the bankers, and technically it's the bankers that are making all this money, and the government is basically just stealing money by creating such an expensive housing market. And if the government have destroyed the country with these false housing markets, and these false rent costs, and these false mortgage payments, then I guess they should use some of the money that they can get back through capital gains tax, through this false capital gains tax, because these houses shouldn't be going up as much as they are, but every time they do, people can sell and make huge amounts of money. So the government is getting rich not through income tax, but I think they're getting hugely rich out of capital gains tax. And this is why they don't care that the housing market is just being totally fucked up, because they're making a huge amount of money from it. And I guess because they have this huge amount of money, they can offer repayments. Is it fair, though, that only people on universal credit should get that? Because that's almost like saying, if you sign up to universal credit, if you start relying on us, we'll give you £3,000 worth of free heating, or a free boiler and stuff. And yeah, is it really just to anyone on universal credit, or is it only to things like that, though, is only going to encourage people to get onto universal credit. But then again, maybe it's not so bad to be on universal credit. If everyone in the country is on universal credit, but technically the only reason why they're on universal credit is because the housing market is completely false. But if everyone is getting £200-300 a month to help pay their £2,000, technically that would just bring the market back to a lower price. But isn't that unfair for the people who are not on it, universal credit? And why is it that you're only offering these deals to people on universal credit? I don't know. Is it just you trying to hook people on and get them to trust you? You have tricked them into spending huge amounts of money on their rent, and as a sort of negotiation, you can put them on universal credit and then give them £300 a month, so that you can kind of be like, oh no, we are helping you, even though we're the ones that actually we've turned you into a slave, and we're not going to tell you that. We've turned you into a slave, we know that, but we're going to give you £300, £400 a month, £500 a month to help you pay your £2,000 a month rent. Is that what the plan is? And I don't know. If that is the plan, then I guess, is it really wrong? Is the question. Is it really wrong? Is it? I think it. I don't know. But if you wanted to get people out of the country, refusing to give them universal credit might be a good way of getting them out of the country. Sorry, you don't apply for this because you're not part of this country, or you don't speak English. It gives the government, if people can only afford rent, if they're getting £300-400 a month to pay their rent, then I guess this gives the government a huge amount of power. Now, if the government knows who is a good person, who is a bad person, I guess if they start committing crimes, and that they're receiving £300 a month for universal credit, they're not going to be able to afford, they're not going to be able to afford their rent without that. And if they start committing crimes, then you can actually say, well, because you've done that, we're going to take all this universal credit away from them. So on a way, I can see why there's a good in it. There's good in it because it can control the people, and that's, if the people need to be controlled, then it might be a good thing. But are the assessors on who should get it and who should not? Are they really are they awake to the fact that we're not all the same. We're not all the same. We're not all equal. And some people do have problems, and yeah, I don't know. I know there's a lot of people who do own their properties and stuff, but yeah, if these people are having like 6 or 7 kids, or even just 3, you know, their kids are going to want properties, another property. That they're not going to want to live in their parents' 1-bedroom flat, if you know, but if they can't afford anything else, then they might be forced to. And yeah, relying on universal credit for me is not nice, because you're relying on money that comes in each month. You know, I'm technically relying on PIP right now, but because I have received a couple of months and I've not really spent anything, I don't know, if it was to be cut, it's not the end of the world. But I don't know. I feel like PIP stops me from feeling like I need to do massage. So I really, I do feel like I need that, because thinking that I have to do massage, or I have to go back to it, you know, that's not a nice. That's definitely horrible for me. Especially whilst I'm being God and stuff. Like, just to feel like not helped is just such an awful thing. But